Insomniacs, Marvel's, Spider-Man. Again. I almost came out of speedrunning retirement for this game way back in 2020, and Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is coming out on the 20th of October this month, like a week from when I'm posting it. So, just in case you missed the first one, we should talk about whether you should play it before the next one comes out. Today we're talking about good old Peter Parker, and it don't matter if your favorite one is Tolbert McBully, Zendaya's British boyfriend, or Sarah Lynn's British boyfriend, because either way you slice it, Spider-Man 1 is the game for you. Wait, not that Spider-Man 1? No. Okay, thank you. Yes, that's the one. Now that we have the right game, I can assuredly say that this Spider-Man game, this Spider-Man 1 game, is the best Spider-Man game ever made.
Are you sure about that?
Okay, well this Spider-Man game... Okay, yeah, there's a lot of Spider-Man stuff out there, and none of it even touches the actual best Spider-Man. And look, superhero fatigue is a real thing, but just like with Star Wars fatigue, or really any franchise fatigue, video games are often exempt. Other than the source comics, this Spider-Man game, or this one based on your personal preference, is probably the best Spider-Man thing. Did you miss this game the first time around because you couldn't get a PS5? Yeah, I know it came out on the PS4, but let's be real, by 2018, a lot of us basically had the PS4 with a ton of dust on it, and we were just using it to watch YouTube TV. You know I'm right. Well, now that you might have a PS5, let's go ahead and play Marvel Spider-Man and really feel like Spider-Man. No, come on, goddammit, not Part 1. It really makes you feel like Batman. Spider-Man. Also, big disclaimer before we get started, I am not a comic book guy, so everything I'm going to be talking about is what is considered a casual fan's perspective, but still one whose favorite superhero has always been and will always be Spider-Man, just like Stan Lee has always said Spider-Man is his favorite. Everybody cool with that? Okay, so clowning on video game reviewers for using the phrase, "it makes you feel like," is honestly really tired at this point, and yeah, I know, Dunkey did it best. It's hilarious because that statement gets hurled around just as poorly for games as your freshman thesis statement on your Romeo and Juliet essay was. It really makes you feel like Romeo dying of poison. Of course you aren't Batman or Spider-Man. Game reviewers have to be careful and use these boilerplate comparisons and examples so that they don't get in trouble for saying the wrong thing with game developers and they don't get review copies sent to them anymore. So yeah, saying that you feel like Spider-Man is kind of silly. But god dang damn it, I feel like Spider-Man. Punch him! Ooh yeah, shoot that web and stick him to the wall. Bam! Up in the air. Oh god, is he gonna die getting kicked off that building? Ah, no, Spidey got him. He wouldn't let someone die. Ooh, I'm crawling through vents and along windows like a sneaky boy. Stealth takedown. Oh, hey, look, I can go hang out with civilians. That's kind of neat. You can kind of like high five. Punch him! Spider-Man games got to do 3 things to be successful. You got to have fluid, varied combat, an interesting, coherent mix of villains, and sweet, buttery smooth physics for a traversal system. Most superhero games just suck because they get 1 or 2 of these things wrong every time. And it's not just Spider-Man. You could apply it to Superman, Batman, Marvel's Avengers, whatever. But this game gets all 3 of those things right. Now, it's not always perfect, don't get me wrong, but you're never going to be left thinking, oh man, that fight was super boring, or it wasn't a great time getting from point A to point B. Go ahead and try and press R2 when there isn't a building, tree, bridge perfectly parallel or above you. It won't work. Doing one of the crime missions and having trouble catching up to a car? Well, you better mix up your swinging with some zip-to-point action and build up speed. Just don't forget when you get there to punch them. There are a ton of ways to smack around bad guys. As the game progresses or you play on a higher difficulty mode, utilizing your gadgets, suit upgrades, and skill unlocks becomes essential to progression. Also, as mentioned, you gotta have a good mix of villains to fight. Spider-Man thrives off of its rogues gallery of villains for Spider-Man to punch, knock out, and throw in the raft. Now the problem is that a lot of Spider-Man media starts to fall apart once you start introducing too many villains for whatever medium you're adapting. Let's put it this way. Tobey Spider-Man 3, Amazing Spider-Man 2. No Way Home, everyone is here. In a film with a limited 2-hour runtime, it's just impossible to introduce and fight villains in a way that feels satisfying. But this is a video game. Marvel Spider-Man has like 6 villains, but only 2 get the true spotlight. Mr. Negative and Doc Ock. All of these enemies have little quirks that make them fun to fight, but they never distract from the primary narrative or Peter's responsibility. I especially love the combo fights with Rhino Scorpion and Electro Vulture because the contrast of their different fighting styles weaving together is peak Peter Parker perfection. To reiterate, the web slinging and the traversal in this game is absolutely fantastic. And I know a lot of people are going to come to me and say that Spider-Man 2 was even more fun to do that. And I get it, but to them, I will say,
even before you start, that was a preemptive shh.
But, like, can we be real? That game was super janky, even though it was great. But I'll take a more polished modern experience over Tobey's whack-ass video game line delivery any day of the week. Before we move on to the collectibles and the story and everything, let's just say this out loud. The stealth missions with Miles and MJ just kind of suck. They're awful.
And I hate it.
Like, there's nothing better than taking out a whole guard patrol in a base mission than by quickly zipping around and going smack. But why wouldn't Spidey be the one crawling through complex air ducts to overhear plans or doing more vent takedowns? It makes no sense for MJ and Miles, who realistically speaking are in plain sight and very easily discovered. Spidey gets to do some fun detective work in some side missions like helping ESU students match photos with places on the map, defusing bombs. Those would have been way better ways to implement MJ and Miles into the story, letting her do the investigative journalism and his scientific hacking in scenarios. Now obviously changing all this probably changes the plot and everything, and I don't want to pretend like I know better than the developers. So while I could criticize little things in the game like the circuit puzzles or the matching the DNA tests on those samples and basically just looking at you and saying, yeah, I get it. I don't really need to do that. But there is a lot of stuff in this game, and there's a lot that you can miss in terms of its gameplay. I mean, look at this map.
That is one big pile of shit.
Part 2, the Stuffy Pit. I'd sure like to collect some more subscriber tokens, eh? Come on, you know you want to.
Please let me win.
Alright, so if you've watched anything else that I've made, that you know that I love to criticize games that have too much stuff in them, or what I'm going to start referring to as the Stuffy Pit. You ever been around a kid who just has like every stuffed animal known to mankind because they inherited it from like their older sibling or their grandparent who just bought them any crap that they wanted? That's a Stuffy Pit. When it comes to video games, this is the equivalent of basically when developers throw mechanics, collectibles, or any sort of currency that you are supposed to accumulate throughout the game. Good Stuffy Pits are well organized and have a clear hierarchy of importance, with big items towering over everything else and placed in the back as a foundation. A bad Stuffy Pit is when there is no order to anything. Everything is kind of the same. There's no room to roll around in your Stuffy Pit, and you wind up losing things because you don't wind up caring about them. Manhattan is pretty weirdly accurately rendered and built in this game. Oscorp, Avenger Tower, the Sanctatorium, the Wakanda Embassy, all of these made-up places fit in perfectly with the way they've been laid out, with real-life things like the Chrysler Building, the UN Building, or even Belvedere Castle in Central Park. And hidden amongst all this chaos and all of these landmarks are tokens. Crime tokens are perfect B tier because some fights are fun and the incentives to earn bonus tokens are really challenging and cool sometimes. Backpack tokens, meanwhile, are A tier because I just think it's a cute nod to Peter's behavior and I love the unlockables. They're really fun to look at. Stuff like landmark tokens and black cat spots are C tier because they're just boring. You're just taking pictures for unlocks. And Goat S tier by itself are challenge tokens, while the base tokens are F tier. Base tokens are not fun because most of the bases are really lackluster. You just fight waves of dudes in ways that are not as quick and interesting as some of the challenge tokens or even crime tokens. It's sad that something could have been the most fun just winds up being more punch 'em. Now, as you progress through the game, you unlock more and more opportunities to collect some of these tokens, and honestly, sometimes you look at it and it feels like But Insomniac knew that they couldn't just throw it all at you and very cleverly decided to slowly unveil your opportunities to get some of these tokens, as well as gatekeeping some of the other currencies. Plus, once you start unlocking different enemies to fight, you get different types of base missions, you get different types of crime missions, and it mixes up what types of tokens you can get and when, which is really cool. Look, there isn't a whole lot to nitpick about these Stuffy Pit items in this game, other than that some are more fun to collect and do than others. Several suit and gadget upgrades are just not very practical or useful, but I'll be sure to let people's personal taste yell at me in the comments about how I'm wrong. Aside from all the gadgets and suits and whatnot, Spidey still has 3 generic adventure game skill trees to level up, but the best part of these abilities is that they are mostly designed with horizontal progression in mind. Now, all of this makes you, quote, feel like Spider-Man, but does this game's story feel like Spider-Man? Part 3, proper adaptations and how to do them. Alright people, let's do this one last time. Insomniac's Marvel's Spider-Man stars Peter, let's call him M for Marvel, Parker. He was bitten by a radioactive spider, and for what's maybe been about 8-ish years, he's been the one and only Spider-Man. He saved the city, fell in love, maybe saved the city too much, got a job with Octavius Industries, he and MJ broke up, and now he's out there taking down baddies and keeping New York safe. I think you know the rest. Adaptations are hard. Art can be very well made by a lot of passionate people in a large team, and still fail because the people at the top either don't understand the material that they're trying to adapt, or they just straight up dismiss it because they think that their idea is better. Spider-Man, alongside guys like Batman or Superman or the X-Men, are basically some of the most popular characters ever adapted. I mean, just look at the ways that Spidey has been done over the years. These movies are silly as hell and really dated, but oh my god, they're so much fun to watch. These movies have some really high points, but they really get bogged down by some bad writing. These movies are really the most technically impressive and hit a lot of the right notes, but they feel pretty safe. But these are perfect. The Spider-Verse movies don't just understand one component of Spider-Man or even the themes or the stories or anything like that. They know Spider-Man so well that they understand not only how to adapt it, but how to expand it. Now, Marvel Spider-Man is a video game, and one that is particularly focused on the combat rather than the story. But this story still does get everything right. Yuri Lowenthal is killing it as Peter Parker. Whether that's the John Bubniak face scan as I played it, or Ben Jordan, don't worry, you can all yell about me which you think is better. And the rest of the cast like William Salyers, Stephen O. Young, and Tara Platt are all fantastic in this game as well. But I mean, when you've got the immaculate Laura Bailey voicing MJ and 4 of the main cast of Critical Role in the first place voicing characters in this game, you're bound to get some good performances. God, I love them. Spidey takes down Fisk and throws him in the raft. Peter is working at Feast with Martin Lee and Aunt May. Uh-oh, looks like there's a gang called the Demons that MJ stumbled into. Now they gotta work together, even though they already broke up. Oh look, Peter's working with Dr. Octavius, but he's a good guy here. Huh, he and Mayor Norman Osborn do not like each other. Oops, Miles is here now, and he's sad. Aw, crap, Lee is Mr. Negative, although we could have seen that from the trailers, let's be real, I'm not spoiling that. And he's got Devil's Breath. Better stop him and throw him in jail. Uh-oh, Otto is bad now, time to beat him and save the day. And scene. But I don't want to talk about any of that.
Who cares?
You already know all of this. You understand what Spider-Man is, especially if you've watched the end of the video here. Let's just highlight 3 scenes in this game that I think perfectly encapsulate how that they've expanded and adapted Spider-Man for this particular story. Norman shutting down Otto's lab. This scene is great because with Octavius starting out as a good guy in the story, we watch the dichotomy between Norman and Otto's drives, a difference between capitalistic selfishness and genuine will to do good, affecting Peter directly. And even as things get worse, we still see Peter strive to follow Otto's initial path, not letting it destroy him as it eventually does Otto. Also, I just like how it makes Norman and Otto look like Mr. Krabs and Plankton. 2. Peter couch surfing. The best thing about Peter is that he is constantly suppressing his own self-interest for the good of others. It's why he always struggles to pay rent. Here, May is just reminding him that he's human, and Pete has to internalize that advice. Also, at that point, Martin walks in, and once you know he's Mr. Negative, his speech about wanting to do the right thing, even when he's been doing the wrong thing again and again, reinforces our love for Peter, someone who has to face that choice of being selfish and doing the wrong thing versus doing the right thing, even when it's killing him. Number 3, Peter and MJ. I feel like Mary Jane Watson is kind of a weird character. A lot of people adore her for being Peter's rock, but like, she often doesn't get a chance to be an interesting character in her own right. But in this story, while at least being semi-interesting, she's still doing the best thing in this well-known relationship. I think my favorite quality of MJ's is that she is the thing that allows Peter to be Spider-Man. But when he has to come back to humanity, it is he that needs the anchor to survive the real world. All these people help Peter get back up, no matter how many times he gets knocked down. Conclusion: a canon event game. Insomniac's Marvel Spider-Man is absolutely fantastic. And by the way, the DLC and the Miles Morales, basically spin-off game are also really good, but we don't got time to talk about them. This game's not going to break the wheel in terms of its story, its characters, or really even its gameplay. There's nothing new. If you put it side by side with Spider-Man 2 or really any modern Spider-Man game, aside from graphical changes and physics, they're really all going to be looking at each other like, you're always going to get a good mix of combat, but it's got to be polished and fun, and web swinging has to feel good. You're always going to get lots of things to collect across Manhattan and upgrades to Spidey's arsenal. As long as they're fun to interact with, great. And your story is always going to have a mix of villains that contextualize Peter's struggle and remind him of why he does what he does. They just have to hit the right beats. Any game can wear the mask. It's a Spider-Man game. This is definitely not the only one. But damn it if it isn't arguably the best one. So on my patented, how many times do I have to feel like Spider-Man before Donkey Senpai notices me scale, I give Insomniac's Marvel Spider-Man 1 Spider-Verse out of 1. Why? Because it's a canon event, dude. This game, like all other Spider stories, is important for all Spider-Men, women, and whatever else. So go play it. You've got about a week from the release of this video to go play this game before the next canon event drops. Okay, let's keep this end card nice and short this time around. Please subscribe. We're on the journey to 1,000 subscribers, and we're going to do all that YouTube crap. We're going to get the community tab at 500 subscribers. We'll make a Discord, and we'll start talking about games we want to do and building this community. It's going to be a great time. I promise. Just subscribe. Let's do it. Let's all be friends, okay? And I'll see you in the next video.
Thank you, bye. Spider kiss?